And these are the top stories from the first half of our show in case you missed them. 5 members of Japan's Coast Guard are dead after a collision with a passenger jet at Tokyo Airport. They were on the way to assist with earthquake recovery efforts. There's no evidence of terrorism in a deadly New Year's car crash in Rochester, New York. BART is back open after derailment yesterday. We're staying on top of all these big stories. You can stay tuned to Special News 1 to find out more of all the headlines you need to know. All right, we're talking about some D.C. records now. Acting U.S. Labor Secretary Julie Su has now served almost 10 months in an acting capacity. That is a record duration for a cabinet-level official to be in this liminal state when the same party controls both the White House and the Senate. President Joe Biden nominated Su for the top labor post last winter, but the Senate never voted to confirm her. Washington correspondent Cassie Seaman joins us from our D.C. newsroom to tell us more about this. Cassie, Happy New Year, first of all. But you've also been following Su's nomination since late February, and I understand the nomination returned to the White House at the end of 23. So what happens now?
Well, a White House official confirms to me that President Joe Biden will renominate Julie Su to be the next labor secretary, but the path forward from there for Julie Su's nomination remains unclear. Senators are preparing to end their holiday break, but acting Labor Secretary Julie Su remains in limbo. Su, who served as California's top labor official and then as Deputy Labor Secretary, was nominated by President Joe Biden last February to be his next labor secretary. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions approved her nomination in April, but she did not get a full Senate vote. The Senate returned Su's nomination to the White House at the end of last month, meaning that President Biden would have to renominate her if he wants to try for confirmation again. A White House official says that's the plan. Republicans have complained about unemployment insurance fraud in California while Su was the state's labor secretary, and her support of vaccine mandates as deputy labor secretary. But the small number of Senate independents and moderate Democrats who have refused to back her have not made clear what their objections are. Last September, we sat down with Su and asked her about her stalled confirmation.
As long as I'm acting secretary, I've got a job to do, and I'm going to do it.
Have you given up on a potential Senate confirmation at this point?
No, I mean, I'm very respectful of that process. I remain hopeful about it, but as long as I'm in this seat, I have an important job to do. The American people expect me to do it. Workers need a strong Department of Labor that is going to connect people to good jobs, that's going to enforce basic labor standards, that's going to pursue policies that benefit working families. So I'm going to keep on doing that.
It remains unlikely Su has the votes to be confirmed. Senator Bill Cassidy, the ranking Republican on the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, is calling for the White House to nominate someone else. It is clear Ms. Su lacks the necessary votes for confirmation. I urge President Biden to put forth a nominee who is committed to the fair enforcement of our nation's labor laws and is capable of being confirmed in the Senate. Last year, Republicans asked the Independent Government Accountability Office to investigate whether Su should be allowed to continue serving in an acting capacity. The GAO concluded that she can, citing the law that authorizes the Deputy Labor Secretary to perform duties of the Labor Secretary if their predecessor resigns. Now, the Senate Help Committee could hold another hearing this year on Su's nomination, but typically those committees tend to avoid a second hearing when the person is just being renominated. We'll have to see how that plays out over the next several weeks, Amrit. But the White House tonight is encouraging the Senate to act swiftly on Su's nomination.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. You can see that she's holding tight, holding patient, and trying to be respectful. Cassie, thank you so much for your reporting. We're going to have a lot to